How many of the people, how many Nigerians have access to early childhood education today? How many? A child's first teacher are his parents. How can you teach your child when you are hungry? In my country, in my own Nigeria, parents labor, struggle under terrible conditions to raise, train, and sponsor their children.
Alright guys, welcome to my channel once again. Have you heard that the Nigerian government through the Ministry of Education wants to stop every child that is not up to the age of 18 from writing JAMB? This is crazy. This is very, very crazy. But anyway, take a listen to the reply that has been given to the Minister of Education, and let me know what you think in the comment section below. Please kindly subscribe to my channel and help me grow this channel. It's important to me. Thank you, and see you guys in the comment section.
Good morning and welcome to the show.
Morning, how do you do?
I'm very well, thank you. Now let's jump right into this because we want to talk about the message that's coming out of the Ministry of Education saying anyone under the age of 18 would no longer be able to write JAMB and ideally also no longer be able to enroll in a Nigerian university. Now, your boss, the former Vice President, Atiku Abubakar, has come out and said that that policy belongs in the Stone Ages. Do you agree?
I do not just agree, but I support it wholeheartedly because that policy smacks of wretched illiteracy. You know, first off, it is part of the policy somersault of the present administration. If not, I don't understand why a Minister of Education want to play politics with education. Over time, we have had multiple ministers of education. Don't forget that the 6334 system of education was introduced as far back as 1982. I remember I was not a product of the 6334, I was a product of the 654 system of education. But when the 6334 system of education was introduced at 1982, of course, it took different states to implement it at different stages, different times. You know, I remember vividly that in Benue State at that time, because I now belong to Kogi State, before the creation of Kogi State, in Benue State at that time, implementation started as late as 1984, even when the policy started or was initiated in 1982. You know, and it was done in phases. And don't forget too that in this administration, you know, like every other administration, it's not even peculiar to this administration. Successive ministers of education come with different issues, different things. They do what they call naming ceremonies. What is a naming ceremony for an Islamic, for maybe an Islamic fellow or a Muslim if there is no ram? How can you conduct a naming ceremony just by nomenclature? You just want to change names, you just want to come up with policies that will stand you out as that people will remember you for as a minister. It shouldn't be limited to our policies. You don't play politics with our educational policy. It is already bad enough. Don't forget that when the 6334 system of education was initiated in 1982, the first thing and the brain behind it and the major template was a situation where the 3H of education, the 3H, as in HHH, in 3 locations, that has to do with the hands, the head, and the heart, will be encapsulated into the educational sector, where you don't just pass through school. By the time a child gets into the junior secondary school, he should have what we call, he should be equipped with skills in vocational education. But that was not to be. Of course, we had a policy somersault later on when people like Professor Dr. Obi became Minister of Education. Even under Jonathan, you had issues like I had the president, former President Jonathan, complain and even apologize to Nigerians. He said we should apologize to Nigerians because our education system has failed. It failed because it is not about the policy, it is about implementation. We want to be like Finland, we want to be like the UK, who are the leaders in the educational sector world over, because they have 100% literacy level. In Nigeria, we just have about 59.57% of literacy level. When I mean literacy level, I'm talking of people who can read and write. So it becomes heartrending when a minister wakes up and begins to junket from one location to the other and feels that, oh, you have to be 18 to become, to write the SSC or to write the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board examination. And the only reason he gave is that the majority of these children get to universities immature. When has age become a parameter for measuring capability? You cannot wake up to say that because a child is 17 or is 16, he is immature. We have men at 80 who are talking and thinking as if they were babies. So it is not about age. It is about our educational policy. The same minister has forgotten. In fact, he was in a meeting where the National Examination Council of Nigeria were present. NECO. NECO is the one that conducts what we call the National Common Entrance. That's where their illiteracy is heartrending. And it's worrisome. If NECO that conducts National Common Entrance, which is an entrance examination into the secondary schools in Nigeria, will be at a meeting where the minister will mount or come out with such a position without raising objections, when if a simple visit to their website will show you that the eligibility requirements to be in secondary school, which is usually through their National Common Entrance examinations, which holds usually between April, June or July every year, is that a child must be 10 years old by September of same year. Schools, new sessions begin in September in Nigeria. So a child who is 10 in September will start secondary school in JSS 1, the one I call grade 7. Now, by the time he gets to SS3, he would already be 16. So what the minister is saying, Mr. Minister is saying, that by the time he gets to 16, he will now leave the school, sit at home, drink fura de nono, wait for another 2 years before he can write the SSC, forgetting that such is a dangerous and horrendous strategy, because it will lead to these children becoming frustrated, and such a situation will breed insecurity, inadequacy, coupled with lack of self-confidence, poor image perception, and an unhealthy identification. How do you expect such a child to pass examination in this country? A country that says it's practicing a 6334 system of education. In fact, they are even confused, because after that, all became and even introduced what we call the 934 system of education, which means that a child spends 6 years in primary school, 3 years in the junior secondary school, before another 3 years in the senior secondary school, then 4 years in the university. We are saying that a lot is happening. Nigeria is the only country in the world that believes in making policy pronouncements without thinking. How do you wake up to say that, when the same organ of government, an agency under the Federal Ministry of Education, that superintends over the entry requirement, which is called the National Common Entrance, for kids going to secondary school, says the eligibility requirement is that a child must be 10 years old by September of the year of admission. So what it means is that a child who is 9.5 in April, in 9 years and few months in April, can write the National Common Entrance. So far, he or she will become 10 by September, and he can get in secondary school by September. How
Mr.
is it possible that a country that is fighting insecurity? Yes.
I'd like to come in here, because you've raised a number of points, and I really want us to, get into the crux of the matter. Considering the myriad of challenges facing Nigeria's education sector, including the dilapidated infrastructure, the lack of quality teachers, and poor learning environments, why do you think that the Ministry of Education has chosen to prioritize age restrictions over addressing these fundamental issues? And also, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar also described the age restriction policy as a disincentive to scholarship and belonging in the Stone Ages. How do you also respond to concerns that this policy might hinder the development of gifted children who are ready for higher education at that very young age?
It is not just about gifted children. There are no dull children anywhere in the world. It still boils down to wretched illiteracy I talked about. Because in this Stone Age, I call it Stone Age because you see how professors like the Minister of Education, who would say that a child should raise up his hand if he knows the answer to the question. When raise and up cannot colligate in the same grammatical environment. When you raise your hand, is it going down? It is going up. So either you put up your hand or you say raise your hand. It becomes odious because up there is not performing any grammatical function. So it's the same way the minister can wake up and tell you that, look, you have to be 18. I just raised valid points to support that already. I am saying that in clear terms. How do you wake up to say that a child must be 18 before he can write SSC or JAMB, before he can gain entry into the university? What is he meant to do between the age of 16 and 18? Stay at home? Join the insurgents? A country that the president and the nation is fighting its security? What do you do with that vacuum? No, it is not just disincentive to gifted children. That's why I keep telling people. It's only in the Stone Ages where they tell you, oh, there's primary 1A, B, C, D, and E. Those in D and E belong as children who are struggling. While the ones in A and B are high flyers. No, there are no dull children anywhere in the world. They are only slow learners. Now, schools were established because of slow learners, not even because of the high flyers. So if a child who has passed common entrance at 9 years and maybe 8 months applies to high school at 10 and is done at 16, you say he should not write the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board. No, or he should not write the SSC. He should wait till 2 years after. Now, the dilapidated infrastructure you're talking is the crux of the matter. We have about 274 universities in Nigeria. 149 of them belong to the private sector, private owners of universities. About 63 of them belong to state governments. 62 belong to the federal government. That's about 274 at the last count. I don't know what may have happened with the NUC in the last few months or since the advent of this current administration. And I put it to you that the carrying capacity of these universities is limited. And I believe very strongly, that this manipulation is coming from the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board. Because if you have just 274 universities that cannot admit more than 700,000 children, and you have over 3 million students writing JAMB every year, what do you do with them? By the time they come with the VC's list, they come with the president's list, they come with the governor's list, they come with different politicians' lists, quality will no longer be there. There will be no space to admit other children. And because there is no space to admit them, you now believe that the only way you can reduce pressure on the university, instead of building infrastructure, instead of improving quality of classrooms, instead of improving quality of hostel accommodation, you now say the only way you can do that is to now restrict age, to now say that you have to be 18 before you get to university or before you can write SSC, when your policy on its own, a federal policy, says that you have to be 10 by the year of admission into secondary school, you have to be 10. So if you are 10 mathematically, and you spend 6 years in secondary school, would that not be 16?
Yes, sir.
How can the same minister who superintends over this, yes. You know, so that's why I say that
these are some of the
wretched illiteracy.
Yeah.
We cannot think before we talk.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I want us to just move the conversation a little further, because you have said that the policy reeks of illiteracy. You have actually also said that it reeks of a lack of thinking. However, your ex-co-worker, Daniel Bwala, another former representative of Atiku Abubakar, had gone on air very recently to say that this administration is actually succeeding, that they're thinking very well, and that they're listening to Nigerians. Do you disagree with what Mr. Bwala is saying in the media?
The first thing I want to disagree with is your description of Mr. Bwala as my former co-worker. I don't understand what that means in English lexicography. Well, for me, I'll tell you pointedly. Mr. Bwala has announced publicly that he belongs to the APC and he is a puppeteer-in-chief for the present administration. That is his business. It is his right. It is within his rights. And if he says too that, the same administration he condemned and said that even if it takes Mr. Tinubu 30 years, nothing can change. And he can turn around in the day before the cock will crow 3 times to say that this is the best thing that will ever happen in mass and on this planet. It is still within his right. But you see, it is left for the world to judge, to separate the wheat from the chaff. So I don't want to be associated with such characters who will say one thing in the day and the other in the night. So I would rather discuss the current administration on my own pedigree, not to have to do anything with responding to Mr. Bwala. That said, this particular issue we are under discourse it goes to show the failure of the current administration. It means that they came without a plan. If you have a plan for education, the same way on the day of swearing in, the day the president took over the oath of office, he said, look, subsidy is gone. Without a plan, today subsidy is being paid. We're spending much more than we used to pay under the last administration, under the last APC administration. It is because there was no planning. Now the minister wakes up, oh, you have to be 18 before you can write SSC. It's still lack of planning. Forgetting that NECO, which is an agency under him, has eligibility requirement on its website and for all schools in Nigeria that you have to be 10 before September of the school year that the child is supposed to gain entry into secondary school. So how do you reconcile that? How on earth do you reconcile that? You see, so this is what we are saying. The failure cannot be described in better terms. Failure, hunger, for instance, is a universal terminology. When people were condemning, oh, who are those sponsoring protests and all of that? For me, hunger is a unifying factor. The man who is hungry in Lagos is the same as the man who is hungry in Zamfara. And the man who is hungry in Zamfara is the same as the one who is hungry in Kogi, in Lokoja, in Egume, in Dekina, in Ganabode, in Port Harcourt, in Wike's Port Harcourt. These are the issues. Failure cannot be described in any other term. It's not a textbook definition. While seeing it physically, even you, before you got to work today, I know how you got there. You have to stay in long queues. And I'm sure if you don't have a car, you have to hop different buses, and you know how much you pay to get there to work. So these are the issues. Failure is failure. It does not have any other name. They know they are failed. Their wives know that they are failed. Their children know they are failures. So what are you talking about? What other definition do you want from me? Is it Boala's kind of definition? You can't get it from me.
All right, I'd like to come in here and just talk about comparative perspectives, because in many countries, university enrollment is based on academic readiness rather than age. And some have suggested that instead of setting an age limit, which is of course what we're talking about this morning, the focus should be on ensuring students are academically and emotionally prepared for university. Now, what are your thoughts on this approach, and what criteria would you propose for assessing readiness for higher education? I also want to just touch on very quickly, if you know or you're aware that the minister is actually talking about the enforcement of an existing law. If you can just go ahead, Mr. Shaibu.
He cannot even enforce it. He does not have the powers to enforce it because it will be resisted by Nigerians. The same set of Nigerians who cannot guarantee quality education in public schools. There are no teachers. Nigeria is the only country in the world where the teachers don't go for refresher courses. And I'm shocked that the leadership of ASU would even support this kind of obnoxious and archaic, stereotyped, conservative policy direction the minister is coming up with. When they are the ones who need more funding for our universities. Our teachers are not trained. We don't even have laboratories. We don't have schools, public schools. Now the Nigerians will now move their children from these so-called public schools to private schools that they cannot even afford to pay. They now, in fact, the choice of schools, which ordinarily should be determined by the quality of the faculty, is not determined by quality of location. A man wants to choose a school for his child. The first thing he considers is how close is it to my house, because he needs to do something. Move his car, take the child to school, or walk with the child to school because of fuel, the high cost of fuel. Some of them who are civil servants, we know what happens in ministries and parastatals in Nigeria, including the FCT. I stand to be corrected. We know those who come to the office and drop their bags in the office and go home because they cannot travel, go drop their kids after school and return. They don't have the fuel to do that. They don't have the gas to do that. Now, teachers in our public schools don't go for refresher courses. My father of blessed memory was my teacher. I remember that after I left college, after I left high school, left university, I was in Lagos, I came back home 15 years later. He was still in the classroom. He was a vice principal academics. And I stumbled on his lesson plan on my dining table. I said, Daddy, everything here looks familiar. He said, yes, nothing has changed. I said, no, everything has changed. How do you tell me nothing has changed? Everything has changed. He said, no. I said, this is the same thing you taught me 15 years ago. You are still teaching other children. He said, yes. I said, no. My dear sister, education is like technology. It is always on the move. Before now, if I tell you that all APC members should converge at Eagle Square, it is correct English. But today, that expression is capable of waking the dead. The right expression is converge on. You don't converge at a place or converge in a place. Because the word converge obligatorily admits the preposition of. The preposition on. So you don't converge in a place or at a place. So the issue is teachers in our public schools do not go for refresher courses. If I were the Mr. Minister, I want to write my name in gold. Oh, come on. Why not work on our existing infrastructure?
Yes, sir. So
why not make sure that there is a deliberate policy for training and retraining of teachers in Nigeria?
Understood.
Why not work on the infrastructure
in
in our universities to accommodate more people?
Yes, I'd like to come in here. I'd just like to come in here because some might argue that due to limited funds, it's hard to work on infrastructure to accommodate more students. But I'd like to ask, what do you feel about people who say that this is based off scientific study on child development? That child that is not fully developed before the age of 18 should not be left unguarded in these adult spaces. What do you say to those people?
We don't have a problem with that. The truth of the matter is that I said it in my opening sentence that age is not a parameter for measuring capability. My daughters, 2 of them are in the university in the United States of America. They went to university. When they make comparisons, I look at them, I laugh. They went to the university at 15. They cook for themselves. I raised them morally. Morally. I have 4 house helps in my home, but interestingly, none of them cook for me. My daughters do that. They start learning the trade from 10. If I'm traveling anywhere for holiday, they fly business. If you fly business class, when you're coming, you must fly economy. You must look at the other sides of the coin. So when they're married tomorrow, nobody will come and tell me, come on, daddy, oh, my husband is not doing well. Maybe things are a little on the downside for the husband. They will not say, oh, no, I'm going to my daddy's house. We are not used to this. You have to be used to it. It is Nigeria. You have to be tough. You have to raise them to be tough, to be able to fit into Tinubu's economy, to fit into APC's economy. Do you understand me? So the issue is, what is maturity? Maturity is not of age. It's a concept of the conscience. It is of the mind. How do you develop the child? How do you do that? Is it by age? Look at the number of insurgents. Look at the number of kidnappers they have arrested. Look at the crime rate in Nigeria. Let me shock you. Those young people between the ages of 18, between the ages of 16 and 25 have numerical preponderance over the other age brackets in our crime rate. Number 1 factor is frustration. They write JAMB. Assuming I'm in the same school with you, my dear sister, you write the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board. I write the same examination. You are admitted because your father is a senator. My father, I remember I told you in the beginning, in the course of this conversation, that my father was a teacher. Now I cannot say to anyone to assist me get admission.
I want to ask
now I stay at home.
This maturity step, because is it from the cooking that your daughters are doing, or is it on a more scientific basis that you're measuring this maturity?
What is scientific now? What is scientific? I said it is a concept. Maturity is a concept of the conscience. Our educational policy states that a child is qualified to enter secondary school at 10. What is more scientific than that, my dear sister? Eligibility requirement is 10 years old. So you cannot wake up without changing that law to say that every child must attain 18 before he can write SSC. You cannot. The minister cannot. Tell him I said so.
But there are
he cannot. We'll meet him in court.
Mr. Shaibu, but there are experts in child
yes,
psychology
I'm a teacher.
Philosophy of education who argue that the law was informed by a scientific consideration of a child's development. So let's even leave the law aside for now. We're just talking about psychologists and experts saying that this in itself was the consideration behind it. Isn't that something that maybe we should pay some attention to, if not all?
I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that. But if we must reform our education, it must be a holistic approach. You don't just wake up and announce a new policy direction as if vice chancellors of universities are your boys and your personal assistants, or the university senate, the leadership of the university senate are under your whims and caprices. No, there are laws governing some of these things. You don't just wake up to do that. One policy cannot be antithetical to the other. You cannot. As much as I believe that what stops us from saying, okay, come on, guys. SSC, yes, you can, since admission starts at 10, you can finish your SSC. When you finish your SSC at 16, you have to go for vocational training. Of course, we have no technical colleges, no vocational institutions anymore. Priority is not even given to our polytechnics in Nigeria. So what do? So you cannot write the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board until you are 18. So if I have a choice, and I believe that my child is mature, and I believe very strongly that having invested in this child in a private institution, private high school, private nursery and primary school, don't forget too that, look, those of us who grew up in our respective villages never had access to nursery education, which is early childhood education. We had to start from primary school. So if you're a minister today, and because you after going to the farm and rearing cattle, or you carry water on and do a lot of things, and before you now started school at 10 or 15, that is not it. My dear, the issue is how many of the people, how many Nigerians have access to early childhood education today? How many? Nobody considers that. A child's first teacher are his parents. How can you teach your child when you are hungry? How? Now, I now raise my child. At 16, the child has passed SSC. If you say, look, before you can write the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, you can change the requirement for JAMB. It will now become optional. It is now my choice. It's okay. If I cannot study in any Nigerian university, let me apply to any university outside Nigeria, if I can afford it. I don't have a problem with that. But to say that students cannot write SSC until they are 18, it is obnoxious. It is an affront on our sensibilities, and it's a clear display of wretched illiteracy.
Thank you, sir. Now, I'd also like to point out or ask you about the high number of out-of-school children we have in Nigeria. Nigeria is one of the countries with we have one of the largest populations of out-of-school children in the country. So even the ones who are not in school, the ones who might now no longer be allowed to join, go straight to university from secondary school, will be joining this out-of-school population, increasing our numbers globally. And people often say that out-of-school children are at risk of increased vulnerability. You have spoken about the insecurity we face in different areas of our country, but also this vulnerability can be more severe for the girl child. How do you feel about that?
My dear sister, if I had my way, I would offer you a piece of meat for this question, because that's a very deep one. And if I had my way too, I would like you to offer some tutorials even to those managing our educational sector today. My dear, the number of out-of-school children in Nigeria is more than the population of Mali and Burkina Faso. Over 20 million. UNICEF statistics. These guys don't bother. They don't care. Now you say that you now want kids who are 16 to now join this number, this large number. You see, it goes to show that we have leaders today. If I were a president, the next minute I'm going to fire such a minister for a nation that is working. Or there should be an immediate panel of inquiry to say, look, what informed this position? We cannot have this number of children who are out of school, practically owing to poverty. You now want to compare our statistics with Finland, that has 100% literacy level. Or you want to compare our statistics with the United Kingdom, that has about 99% literacy level. Or South Africa, that's about 93.6%. We're talking of countries where education up to the junior secondary school level is free, absolutely free. Absolutely free. In my country, in my own Nigeria, parents labor, struggle under terrible conditions to raise, train, and sponsor their children. Then they now get to grade 12, which is the one you call SS3, and you say they cannot write the SSC exams. Apart from out of school children, let me tell you what it will lead to. If they have to stay at home for 2 years before writing SSC at 18, it will lead to high rate of examination malpractice. And inadvertently, it will lead to what we call certificate forgery. You know that since 2021, 2022, we have been complaining about certificate forgery and certificate forgers. So if we now want to add more people to this list of certificate forgers, then Nigerians should know what we are in for under this administration. And that is why this minister must be stopped. There must be a human face to this policy. They can't say that. They cannot.
Well,
he cannot. Some of us are going to court. He will meet us in court.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
We will use their own rules. We will use their own rules to fight them in court.
Okay, so
to expose their inadequacies and incompetence, you know?
Well,